Hey Insiders, Alex here with another edition of Stone Industry Insider. Today, I'd like to take a look back and put a bow on the year of 2025 and see how the year went for my companies and also how did the year go for the industry as a whole, in my opinion. So, without further ado, let's take a look back at 2025. So, for Stone Industry Insider, this was year one. I started the company in August, started the YouTube channel, and started the blog at stoneindustryinsider.com. And my favorite piece of content that I created this year was the blog post on Gen Z and how they're entering the workforce and what ramifications, what considerations come along with that. That can be found over at stoneindustryinsider.com in the blog section. While it was year number one for Stone Industry Insider, it was year 137 for the W.F. Myers Company. The W.F. Myers Company is where I devote most of my time and energy. It's the biggest of the businesses. It's the most established, obviously. So that's what takes up most of my time. And for W.F. Myers, it was a year of reevaluating and exploring. When I look back on the year and I think back on all the projects we took on, those two words come out to me as recurring themes throughout the year. So we reevaluated a lot of things. We got rid of things that no longer suited us and just kind of modernized the business in a couple ways and slimmed it down and got real lean and mean. And that's kind of what I mean when I say that. And then exploration, we got our presses a couple years ago, or last year rather, and we're still exploring what can we do with these. What changes can we make to our products? What new products can we offer? And I think we spent a good bit of time this year working on both of those questions. No answers yet, but more opportunities that we found and more answers to come in the future, certainly. While this was a year of exploration and reevaluation, it was not our best sales year of all time. I think there are some larger trends at play in the industry that really altered the course of 2025, and I'm going to attack those later. So kind of put a pin in this. We'll come back to it. So when it comes to W.F. Myers equipment rental, for this business, 2025 was a pretty quiet year. I did have one successful rental of our Quarry Saw in October. That worked really well. A customer who rented it saw some nice improvements. And the other thing that I've done with equipment rental this year is evaluated some new equipment. I'm still going through that process, and we'll see 2026 may bring a new equipment acquisition. Still working on that. So more to come in 2026 for W.F. Myers equipment rental. So similar to Stone Industry Insider, Limestone Capital Software was also born this year. I took part in a networking group, and we had a speaker come and talk to us about some vibe coding tools. And I got really interested in that and started playing around with that. And that really ultimately ended up being the genesis for Limestone Capital Software and how LCS got its start. So what happened with Limestone Capital Software this year, I developed one product, gave it to a handful of folks for testing, and got some really good feedback that the tool wasn't really quite what they had expected, wasn't really quite what they wanted, and didn't necessarily move the needle for them enough to warrant a purchase. So that one's a little bit back to the drawing board, either trying to find a market that's a better fit than some of the people who trialed it, or maybe we put that one to bed and that's it. I also had a demo on a different piece of software. The second piece of software tracks Diamond Tool Life. I'm pretty excited about it, but I'm definitely still refining what needs to be in it and what needs to not be in it. How can we gather information without overcomplicating things? So that's kind of the challenge that I'm wrestling with on that. So now my thoughts on the industry in general. And obviously, there are some big picture trends, some big picture things that happened in 2025 that affected WF Myers, affected, my other companies I work on, and more importantly, affected the industry as a whole. And I think one of the big things we saw in 2025, we saw some uncertainty. And I think uncertainty is just bad for business in general. I think we saw some uncertainty surrounding policy, especially early in the year, with some on again, off again tariffs. And I know that, for WF Myers, we have a lot of business internationally. We source products internationally. A lot of our customers in the US sell internationally. We sell internationally to Canada. So a lot of the back and forth on some of the tariffs and some of the other regulatory things made this year a bit of a challenge. So a couple other things that made this year a little bit challenging. The stone industry is tied to non-residential construction, which is in a down cycle. Every industry is cyclical, and 2025 was just not a great year for non-residential construction. I know one of the contributing factors to that was with colleges and universities, who are huge consumers of natural stone, particularly Indiana limestone. And I think a lot of schools were maybe unsure about where things were going. Maybe donors were unsure about where things were going. And so I think a lot of construction projects got paused or put on hold or, otherwise delayed. So as I mentioned, WF Myers sales were down. And in talking to customers, in talking to other tool and equipment manufacturers, what I found is our experience this year was not anything out of the ordinary, not anything different than other people were seeing, just kind of a soft year for the industry in general. And I think you can attribute a lot of that to the cyclical nature of the non-residential construction industry, as well as, like I talked about, some of the uncertainty with tariffs and regulations. So there you have it. There are my thoughts on 2025. I think that I may end up looking back on this year in the future a lot like I look back on 2020 now. 2020 was obviously a very difficult year for a variety of reasons, but I look back on the work that we did at WF Myers, and I think, yes, it was difficult. Yes, it was painful. Yes, it was not fun to go through, but our company came out positioned more strongly on the other side of it. And my hope for 2025 is that it's one of those years that forces you to go back, reset some things, reevaluate some things, right size, and, get what you need. And then you're better positioned to go from there. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. If you want to be an insider, sign up, subscribe to this channel, or go to stoneindustryinsider.com, where you can sign up for relevant content delivered direct to your inbox. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.